super excited about this podcast today. You have been a marketing and PR professional for 30 years. How did you look so young? What's the secret?
Good moisturiser.
So good moisturiser. But I'm excited about the audience hearing all that you've learned in the PR marketing industry for 30 years. Maybe just start off, people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background.
Of course. Well, thanks for having me on the podcast, for starters. How did I start? I mean, probably like lots of young people when I was at school, I didn't really have a clue what I wanted to do. I was always quite creative, artistic. I had an art teacher. He once said to me, I think you'll be good at advertising. No one had ever told me I'd be good at anything. So I sort of clung on to that. Went through school, university, started applying for ad agencies. Pretty tough, boring, long process. And I was impatient, and someone said to me, my mother will claim that it was her, so we'll go with that. Why don't you try PR, similar to advertising? So I wrote to a load of PR companies while still kind of carrying this dream of going into the ad world. One agency wrote back to me. It was an agency called Lynn Franks. Turned out one of the most famous, successful agencies of its era. It was the agency that inspired Absolutely Fabulous. Crazy place. They offered me a work placement. And genuinely, it was like love at first sight. I was like a duck to water. I went in, worked for them for a few weeks, and they offered me a job. I said yes, and never looked back. That was the start.
Work placement as a frame, I feel that doesn't exist anymore. You've got to have a degree and like 4 years worth of debt before you can even get work placement. I mean,
it's tough, but I think more and more companies are opening up, because they realise the importance of bringing in people from all sorts of backgrounds. Sometimes the issues with work placements were unless you could afford to work for nothing, you're at a disadvantage. Now that situation has changed due to lots of...
Has it changed? I'm still seeing adverts for internships that you must have a marketing degree.
Sometimes. I mean, look, I was always a great believer in creativity comes from everywhere. You need diverse group of people, backgrounds, locations. So you have to make the opportunity accessible to everyone. I think the world has woken up to that a bit. There are people that are guilty. I mean, my son is doing a work placement, or was doing a work placement, and it was tough, and he wasn't getting any value from it. He was painting walls and making cups of tea, and that's no point in doing that. The whole point of a work placement is really to see if someone has the potential, and for them to see if they enjoy what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, when you're young, you don't have workplace experience. You don't really know, I had a teacher in my ear saying you'd be good at advertising. And I didn't have a clue whether I would be or would like it or not. When I got into this environment at Lynn Franks, I loved it. It didn't feel like work. It was a dream. And that was the only really way for me to know that. And equally for them, they could look at my CV and they could see, quite good at this, not very good at that, did okay at this. But how can they tell my personality? How can they tell my work ethic? How can they tell if I'll be a culturally good fit? So a good work placement process should enable each party to evaluate it from their perspective. And you must never take advantage. They should really be paid. At the very least, they should cover expenses. But there should be an opportunity at the end of it. It's not an excuse for free labour. And unfortunately, in my industry, it's a glamorous industry. A lot of people want to get into it, especially specific areas like fashion or sport or entertainment. And in the past, and it does exist to some degree, people take advantage of that, and they will have people interning for a year with no pay and probably no prospect of a job at the end of it. That's unfair. That's taking advantage of a young person. But I always say to anyone who asks me for advice of how to get into the industry, I'm like, go and work at as many places as possible. Don't worry about the money. Great if you're getting something. But even when you do get a job, I was earning, I won't tell you how much, but it was pitiful. And all my friends were on double, and they were in banking or a property or whatever it might be. And I was like, am I a mug? But I could tell from a really, really early stage, we'd go to the pub, I'd have these great stories. Yeah, I was hanging out with Kate Moss today, or I went to the BAFTAs yesterday, or I did that. That was my sort of currency, and I was loving it. And although they were earning double and buying me the drinks, I was the one with the stories, and I was the one really loving it. And even at an early stage of their careers, they were a bit kind of just going through the motions. Fast forward 30 odd years, they're all fed up and they don't know what to do. They're trapped. They've been in these big corporates for years. Like in any industry, I think only certain people rise to the top, but you can make great money in whatever industry you choose to go into if you're good at it. So it took me a while to catch up and then overtake. But it wasn't the money. That wasn't my motivator. It was finding something I loved and that I was good at.
I wish that message could get through more. I wish that message would get through more to people, because I think a lot of people are coming out of university in debt and they're desperate to earn money, and they'll go where they can earn the most amount of money instead of doing what I've done. I have exactly the same experience as you. When I was younger, I was laughed at in a gardening company. It was like grimy, like a dirty job. Yeah. Oh, God, you're doing gardenings, where my friends were, well, first of all, off to university, and then they were getting fancy jobs with brand name companies. But now they're not enjoying what they're doing. They're trapped with high costs of living matched with their income, and they don't actually love what they do, which is such a cliche thing, right? Do what you love.
Yeah, it is a cliche, but I remember my brother who, he took a long time to find an industry that he enjoyed, and he turned around to me. I think he'd been working 5-6 years, and he said to me, "I always thought you were just winding me up when you said you loved work. I genuinely didn't believe you. I thought you were just being a dick and big brother sort of behaviour. And I found something I love now," and he did, and he's still in that industry sort of 25 years later. But it is hard, and it's a blessing if you can find something. And I'm a great believer, to be successful you need 3 things. And I know you may not agree with this, but I'll tell you them anyway. I think you need to find something you're good at. You need a bit of luck, and you need to work hard. And those 3 things need to sort of work in combination. Because if you can work hard, but if you find something you're not naturally talented at or good at, that work can be a bit of a waste of time. You can be good at something, but be lazy. And I don't believe anything happens without hard work and effort and blood, sweat and tears. And you can have both of those and be good at something and work hard, but perhaps don't get your break and don't get that bit of luck. And of course, the more you go through life, the more you're able to spot the opportunities and take the luck, if you see what I mean. Like sometimes people just let opportunities pass them by because they don't identify it. But if those 3 things work in combination, that's what will achieve success. And unfortunately, with a lot of young people, partly it's because of social media and just watching other influencers in inverted commas, they think wealth is an overnight thing. They want the Lamborghini by the time they're 21. They want to be flashing the Rolex. Life doesn't work like that. Unless your granddad dies and leaves his estate or you win the lottery, no one gets rich without hard work. And you mustn't be scared of that. I'm so passionate about working hard to achieve what you want to achieve. And that's what I try and instill in my children, that, there's no such thing as an overnight success. You've got to put the effort in. And if you do, and you can find something that you're good at, there is no reason why you won't be hugely successful.
I find it very hard to argue with that, by the way. I mean, the words hard work, that's the only thing that a little bit worries me as a messaging, because I think the nuance of what you're saying there matters. And I mean, you rocked up here in a McLaren, right? So you've proved that working hard and what you've achieved is success. You're rolling up in a car that you proved to the world you've done it. I think the thing is, young people will see someone rent a car for a day and assume that 20-year-old's made it quick, right? And they won't understand the depth. The hard work thing, this is my problem with it. Feel free to jump in, because you've probably got an opinion on this. People working smart is better than working hard.
Of course.
So it's like working hard itself. Like the thing you said that's so relevant, I think, is that you don't even notice you're working hard when you're doing something you love. And I think that's the difference for a lot of people that might hear working hard will make it, because they're not necessarily working hard on something they love. So those 2 have to go together, right? They have to go together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing a lot of people don't really understand. And you just said it again. It's so vital to people to understand this, that they're not doing what they love, so work feels hard. The word work is negative.
Yeah, that's very true.
And how to help people realise that. They almost need to find something they love to realise what we're saying is true.
Yeah. I mean, I say I work. It genuinely doesn't feel like work. I don't even have what I would call a work-life balance. Everything sort of blends into one. But yeah, I think what's wrong at the moment, I hate this hustle culture of, I've got to be up at 4 a.m. and be in the gym by 6. And, you work around what works for you. Or I'm in a fortunate position I can do that. Sometimes it's harder if you have an employer. But yeah, working hard is about working smart. And the more experienced you get, the better at it you get. And I think it took me a long time to realise that the most valuable commodity I have is my time. And you have to properly protect that. And you have to learn what to do, when to say no. And that takes experience. It's difficult to do. When you love doing deals and you love doing business, you do have a tendency to put your hand up and say yes to everything. But actually that's detrimental to your future success because we only have a definitive amount of time. So you've just got to use that as wisely as you can. So working hard is not about working all the hours in the day. It's about focus. It's about discipline. And, I'm a great believer. You do see people that they work really hard for a short period of time, then they burn out, or they work really hard for a couple of days, then their girlfriend play golf for a few days. I don't believe in that. I think it's about consistency. Every day, just do something that matters, improve a little bit more, do one good thing, and that compounds and becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. But you've got to understand yourself, where your value is, what your time is best used for, and not sell your time, sell your value, so that you're achieving the most you can possibly achieve and doing the best possible job that you can do, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. I think people are taught at school, though, that generally you're selling hours.
Yeah.
You're doing a 40-hour contract or a 0-hour contract, even worse.
Yeah.
But you're right. It should be about what people should be thinking about is what value they can bring and pricing that value, not pricing the time.
It's incredibly important, especially in the world that I'm in. And it's quite hard in marketing and PR and social and the agency world around that to get out of the mindset.
Well, clients are all asking for hours, aren't they?
Correct.
How many hours will this take?
Clients are looking at you as a commodity, and they're, especially with the rise of procurement and the need for businesses to deliver value when they're using agencies, it's an easy metric. But it's bullshit. It's about value. Every business should be in the business of creating value for someone else. And you need to package your worth in a way that you're remunerated for generating that value. But it is hard because that's how it's an easy metric. You speak to most financial directors and, they won't allow you not to operate an agency on a timesheet model because it's the only way they can get their head around things. But, I built up years of experience. I could come up with a creative concept or a strategy maybe in 5 minutes. On the drive here today, I had a brilliant idea, in my opinion, that,
I'm sure it was.
Took me 10 minutes. It might take someone else 3 months to come up with that, or never.
No, I want to hear what it is, by the way.
So,
Is it a secret?
I'll let you know. But, what do I do? Charge for 10 minutes of my time? That was the time it took. Or do I charge for the 30 years of experience that led me to get to an idea within 10 minutes? But the most important thing is that concept has to deliver a value for someone, and that's how I should be measured. If I can add £1 million of revenue to someone's business or increase their share price by 2% or whatever that metric may be, I want a proportion of that value, not a proportion of the time it took me to do something which may or may not work. And I as most confident business people should be, will stand on that. If I don't deliver, don't pay me. If I can't increase value, I shouldn't be paid. But if I do, I want to be rewarded proportionately for the value I'm adding to you.
Everybody rich, if you look at the top 100 rich list, which I've studied how a lot of these people have made their money, it's all linked to like equity in a company, for example. There's not a salary they were paid that made them rich. It wasn't that monthly fee. I think Mark Zuckerberg pays himself $1 a month. I mean, it's not about the salary. It's about you have an idea for a business, you then increase the value of that business and you have equity in that company. Yes. And therefore, over time, that's where the real value lives. Yeah. But that's not taught in school. Why do you think it's not taught in school?
I just think the school system, now I see it with my children. It's like, I don't know. I don't understand it. And I'm not saying school's terrible. I don't think it is. But no one really equips you for going out into the real world. Yes, you can do economics, you can do business. I did both, which helps a bit. But just understanding entrepreneurship. I mean, my oldest son is actually doing his degree in business and entrepreneurship. It's a fantastic degree because it's teaching you how you can, not just how business operates, but how you can operate yourself as an individual and build a business as an entrepreneur. But I still would say it's taught in quite a theoretical.
Isn't it just better to go and start something with a bit of support? And wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
But personally, I mean, I didn't do a degree in business or entrepreneurship. I just went and knocked on a door and said, "Your garden's messy. Can I tidy it up?" And started a gardening company. That it feels like that's all over-engineered now a little bit. It's a soft landing, perhaps, but it's not really. I mean, especially with marketing degrees, for example, particularly grind my gears, because I feel like people get into $50,000 or pounds worth of debt, spend 4 years learning something. If they just went and worked 3 months in the marketing department at an agency, they'd learn it all
absolutely
and get paid. Get paid to learn.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting that the things that you're talking about, both hard work and love, they're not taught in school. Young people aren't really thinking about it. So then, like what you were saying earlier, people are coming out and they're either looking for a job that pays well straight away, and then they're not considering the currency of experiences or the currency of building up skills or value over time, or they're trying to get rich quick. And if they do see the flashy world of entrepreneurship, they're then thinking, okay, what can I do to get the McLaren quickly or to get rich overnight? And then they're completely neglecting reputation and personal brand, which is the most powerful thing you have. And I mean, I'm only young, I'm like learning this as I go, but like by being involved in something purposeful, meaningful, having a mentor and building something that is long term, has a potential impact to change the world, I think is over time, one, giving me more exciting experiences to talk about, and two, I think provides more value to me and the world in the long run, because I build up equity value, I build up skills and experiences that I would have never had if I just took a marketing job. But I mean, the work that you've done over the years is incredible, and I think like I just said around personal brand being everything, a lot of people aren't thinking too much about PR these days or their personal brand when they're getting into entrepreneurship. Marketing is a key buzzword, and so is say finance and things like that. But people aren't thinking about PR. Why do you think it's important, and how do people give focus to that or learn it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd slightly challenge that. I think people are doing PR. They don't necessarily realise that they're doing PR, and that everyone has a personal brand because that's them. Whether they're kind of proactively trying to curate that, but we all have. If you said to someone, "What do you think of Andrew?" they'd have an opinion of me. They'd tell you something. That's my personal brand. I can try and influence that, but to me, you can't afford not to do PR. Simple as. And I'm not brainwashed because I've spent my entire life doing it, but your reputation and how you build that, how you protect that, how you communicate that is the most valuable things. You can't afford not to have a personal brand, and you can't afford not to do PR. There is a bit of a perception perhaps that PR is out of reach. It's unaffordable because it's expensive. I don't know how to do it. But PR doesn't need to cost money. I mean, yes, there are huge sort of billion-dollar agencies that will charge you a lot of money to manage your brand. There are smaller agencies. I've just launched a business which is a tech platform that matches one-man bands and freelancers to people, pre-qualified, amazing PR people for people that can't afford or don't need an agency. Or you can learn and you can do it yourself. In my mind, there's no shortcuts. That you have to understand what it is you're trying to communicate. You have to know what you're trying to achieve. You should never do it for the sake of doing it. And then you go on a path of achieving that. Sometimes you need external help and advice. Often it's common sense. The thing with a personal brand is it has to be authentic. It has to be yourself. Everyone else is taken. Just be yourself. Don't try and copy someone else, try and emulate their style. Find something that works for you and then be consistent about it and do it. But know why you're doing it. Why would I want to build a personal brand? It's not because I want more likes on Instagram. It's not because I want TikTok followers. It's because I want to generate awareness of what I can do for businesses so that I can help them. So everything I do needs to be connected to that. Every piece of content, every piece of communication, whether that's a tweet or an X or whatever you call it nowadays, or a post, or, you know, something on LinkedIn, you've got to think, what is the reason that I'm doing this? You know, I think nowadays we're in an era where our platform is free. You know, you can sign up to any social media platform and at the click of a button have the potential to reach millions and millions of people. Doesn't cost anything to do that. So there's a tendency to over-communicate, and constantly people will say to me, what's the best time of the day to post? You know, should I be posting twice a week or 5 times a week? Doesn't matter. And don't feel like you need to. If you've got nothing to say, no one's waiting for you. But when you have, think about what each post and what that post is designed to achieve, and do it with purpose. But the challenge nowadays is what technology has done is it's opened up a huge opportunity, but it's also, there is so much content, and you read all these stats of, you know, we scroll through 50 Eiffel Towers a day, or I can't even remember, you know, we get bombarded by 100,000 commercial messages a day. That's a lot of noise. So you've got to find a way to cut through that noise and get people to sit up and take notice. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. And creating a personal brand, doing your own PR is time consuming. So if you're going to do it in a way that cuts through and gets noticed. And that doesn't mean it has to reach everyone. If you've got to know who your audience is, who you're trying to reach, and talk to those people. Because I would rather have 5,000 followers who are completely important to my world, MDs, CEOs, marketing directors, owners of holding companies, whoever that might be, than 5 million, not irrelevant, but, you know, just people that think I'm funny or interesting, or, you know, you want the right people. That has to be done in a strategic and thought through way. Sometimes I think social media can be a bit mindless and people just do stuff because it's there, because it's easy. So I'd always encourage people to stop and think.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I think you're exactly right. I think a lot of people are realizing the opportunity of social media. They're realizing they can reach loads of people, but they're not thinking long term. They're not thinking about their reputation. They're not thinking about their purpose, like you just said. So what are some good examples of people that you think have done that amazingly over time? Or on the split side, what do you think are some bad examples of people that have really completely neglected it and harmed their reputation by going for a quick buck or not considering PR?
I mean, look, we could talk about this man here, who I've known since, the start. It was the start of your journey, wasn't it?
You were there at the very beginning of it all, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember a conversation with you when, I think it was when we'd first met face to face, and I said something along the lines of, you're much nicer in real life, you're a bit of a knob on social media. And you said something to me along the lines of, but that's what works, and that's what's, you know, when I say, hey, I'm Simon, you know, I'm a millionaire, learn from me, that's what gets the hits, that's what gets the views, that's what gets the engagement. I said, yeah, but...
That's also what I'm competing against.
Yeah.
You know, competing against the people that are selling false hope.
Yes.
They're saying they're rich and they're not, and they're giving people knowledge that just sells a course.
Yes.
To fight fire, you have to have fire.
Yeah,
so,
true.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, because you said it earlier and I agree with it as well, you know, I am myself... I think there's a hook. There's always a hook.
Yes.
But that's different to that's why I love long form content like this, because people can get to know the person
but
much
you've
more.
Adapted.
Yes,
you know, the way you've built your social media, not only have you built, you know, it's become more professional, better produced, but you've toned it down and you've added the substance and it's much more you. I know there's still the sort of what's your dream is your sort of hook in, which is totally fine. But
it's much better than I'm a millionaire. I much prefer that.
Better. I prefer that too. But you know, so I think if I use you as an example, I'm not just sort of blowing smoke up, it's consistent. You know what you're going to get. You know who your audience is. You know why you're doing it. There's a purpose to it. There's no hidden agenda, like you said, the sort of get rich quick. Here's my course. Do this for free and then sign up for £5,000 a month every month. You know, you're there, you're transparent, but it's you. It is you, and that's what it's all about. And I think you're a good example of someone who uses social media for good and for purpose, and it's helped you build a following, it's helped you commercialize what you're doing, and it's helped you achieve your dream of helping other people. So that sort of all fits together and it works. And I think you look at other people, you know, Stephen Bartlett would be an obvious example of someone in business who's built their own personal brand and then used that to get into different areas, also added value back by educating people, built it out into different areas. Fantastic. I think, personal brand is no different really to any sort of A-list celebrity or a man on the street. It's always about doing something that works for you. And the best talent in this world, whether they be a Hollywood actor or someone that is just a YouTuber from their bedroom, they constantly reinvent themselves. They do stuff consistently. They build, they surprise. It's the same as a business. I think, there's very, very few unique businesses where they don't have a competitor or someone in their space. And the danger with a business, same as with an individual, is we're inclined to say everything. We've got so much to say. I remember when I got my first office and we'd do a presentation, it would literally go down to the level of detail. We got 17 plugs and 15 light fittings. I was so proud. I wanted to tell everyone everything. You got to narrow that focus. And people talk about unique selling points. I'll always talk about unusual selling points because I think that cuts through more. But you've got to find your thing you want to talk about and stick to that. And when that runs its course or needs adapting, then, steer the ship in a slightly different direction. But don't try and be all things to all people. Know your audience, know what you're trying to achieve, and then have consistency. But be yourself and do it in a way that it works for you. And the people that I think are bad examples are probably the people that have faded away and we haven't even sort of noticed. But you do see people that are rushing for that short-term fix, and you see them go off in one direction, that doesn't really work, then you see them do something else, or then you see them disappear. Consistency is key, and I think that's what makes a strong personal brand: consistency and authenticity.
I think a lot of personal brands as well. I don't want to name anybody because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but there are some people that have become very famous very quickly, but you'll notice they die just as quick. And I think that I didn't set out to be famous. I think I set out to have a reputation amongst my peers as someone doing something good, for my wife to respect me and for my son to be proud of me. I think that people that set out just to be famous, sometimes that can be a quick up and a quick down.
For sure.
And I think it's just like business. Businesses that are big, quick, often blow up quick.
Yeah.
I think that the key is actually, ironically, doing the reps, right? Just putting the time in. And it's funny because someone like yourself, first of all, I feel very grateful you come on this podcast because I know you are very sparing with where you put your personal brand, and you pick carefully where you put your time. I think it's someone like you, though, I wish was more famous because you're someone that knows how it all works. You've got the experience, and there's so many young people that be listening to this podcast that can learn from you. So part of me, selfish part of me, thinks it's damn annoying that you tend to focus your marketing toward the CEOs and those guys because there's so mmany young people that can learn what you're talking about. I'd love it for you to go to the general. Those 5 million followers, I wish you did have that. I actually want that for you because in that 5 million followers is the 50 people that already do. But there's just so many people out there that are not real. There's people out there that are using that influence to not necessarily bring value, And I wish there was more people like you that have actually done it, that have actually, genuinely care about the world, want to make the world a better place, that did have a big following. And that's a lot of time the pitch I'm making to some high-profile entrepreneurs. It's like they're millionaires. They don't really need social media followers, but they've got superpowers that the world could use. They could fix the education system if they had more followers.
I get that. Look, I've always been much more comfortable being that person in the shadows that makes other people famous. And even when I had my agency, the reason why we did social media and built a profile is because I never wanted to have to pick up the phone and sell. I wanted people to come to us. I wanted to build our brand as the best, most creative PR agency in the world, and the phone would be ringing. And I did that, not just me on my own, but I did that by hiding behind the brand.
Is that still possible today, though? I feel like I'd love to build HelpBnk, if it not being Simon Squibb. That would be great.
It was the work. My philosophy was everything comes from great work. You do brilliant work, you attract new clients because they see it. You attract the best staff because they want to work on it. You win awards. And everything sort of goes in a circle. We never used to worry about money, or we're like, let's just do the best creative work we can possibly do because everything else comes from that. So we would promote the work. And the reaction I wanted was people to say, what a brilliant campaign. Actually, the best reaction would be, wish I thought of that. That is genius. And that's what we tried to do day in, day out for our clients. And yeah, then I sort of stepped back, went on my own. My model is, working with partners, the best in the business, whatever someone needs or wants. They won't be my staff, but I will handpick them from around the world. I might use an agency that I've invested in. I might use someone niche, random, but there'll always be people I know from my network. But in order to promote my services, I called my company Andrew Bloch Associates, the least creative name in the world. And I did
quite a cool name. It's not that.
It's not cool. It's not creative. I did it for two reasons. Number one, I wanted to back myself. This was about me, my network, my reputation. So I put my name on top of the door. Two was for search. I was just like, rather than create some crazy sort of weird, funky, cool name that will take years to build up in search. If I call myself my name, there's already a search history. When you search my name, you'll find my company first thing on Google without having to pay for it. So
I always resisted calling anything my own personal name because when I'm dead, it's over. And then I was reminded about Ogilvy, still going.
Yeah,
David Ogilvy's long since gone.
There is so many reasons not to do it. But for me, I'm not trying to build something to sell. It's something to help other people. You wouldn't call an agency your name necessarily because when people are buying an agency, they want to buy more than one person. They don't, they're buying a team, they're buying a brand. But that's not my end game. My end game is just to work with brilliant people and do great work and help others, achieve success and growth and fame and money and all that sort of goes along with it. So, but I felt uncomfortable because all of a sudden I was the only person that could promote Andrew Bloch and Associates. But I've sort of found my way of doing it. I mean, weirdly, for someone that makes other people very famous and successful, I'm quite introverted. I'm okay talking about this sort of stuff because it's my sort of home turf, if you like. But I'm not the sort of person that will walk into a room and go and shake hands with everyone. I hate that sort of networking. So my networking is social networking. But I do it I just try and I'll communicate what I'm doing because my belief is if I talk about a project I've done, say a bit of work that I'm doing, the natural inclination of people is to think, oh, we could do with a bit of that. And they pick up the phone and they say, saw you did this, could you help us? We've got a similar challenge. That's what happens.
That's the harder way to do it, but the long-term better way to do it. I think, again, people listening, it's like a lot of the time they think the big noise, lots of exposure, lots of clients suddenly, you die under that pressure. You'll get lots of work and you won't be able to deliver one piece of quality work.
I say no to 90% of stuff that comes my way, but that isn't lost revenue necessarily because I will refer it to someone who has got the time or potentially better suited for the job, and then I'll take a share of their revenue by sort of referring it. But I'll only take on stuff I know I can do a really good job of. And part of that is enjoyment. Like, it's not enjoyable to do something. Part of that is, why would you sort of have to blag your way through and figure it out? I don't believe in that philosophy of say yes and then figure it out. I think it was Branson that said that. I don't believe that. I believe only say yes if you know you can do a great job. And then it all sort of builds into the reputation thing, because I don't think you'll find anyone that will say, oh, yeah, I worked with Andrew, he really let me down. He said he could do this and he failed and he promised this and didn't deliver. You won't find that. Not because I'm necessarily a genius. It's because I'll only say yes to the things I know I can do a great job of. If an agency comes and says, yeah, we need help with our growth, we need help with marketing, if I don't feel I can help them, I won't do it. If I don't like the agency, the people, I want to enjoy it. I want to know that it's not necessarily within my comfort zone, so it's being lazy. I'll always, when I say I know I can do it, there is always an element where I'm pushing myself a bit. And, I advise agencies that are 10 times bigger than I ever achieved myself. So in a way, I'm out of my comfort zone because I've never run an agency that's making 20, 30 million pound profit a year. Like, that was well beyond what I managed to achieve. But the principles of it are the same, and So
the creative spark is what you're talking about. Most of these companies, when they get big, they sometimes lose that bit.
Absolutely.
Right?
You get big and you lose all the things that made you great in the first place. And that's the trouble with established brands. It's the trouble with established businesses. They become so big and they put in all these processes and systems and think, we're big now, we've got to have this, we've got to do it that way. We couldn't do that anymore. No, be big, but still think about when you were a startup and you had that spark and you were a challenger and you were fighting off the big guys and the establishment. That's what made you special. So just because you're big doesn't mean you have to behave big. You can be big and act. Same as when you're small. A lot of the companies I work with or have invested in, they're really small, but they're run by people that are very, very experienced. And that's the beauty of it. You get the background of big brains, big minds, big agency backgrounds, but with the small entrepreneurial spirit. You've got to have that. We can take on the world. We can do anything. We can think differently. We can act differently. Like, big shouldn't equate to boring.
You said something there which I love, which is you can make anybody famous. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And just as someone that's accidentally become a bit famous, it's a pain in the arse, actually. Like, I'm glad I'm famous for a purpose, not for my own personal gain.
Yeah.
Because I've given up stuff because I'm famous. I can't go out as easily. I can't do the things I want to do as easily. I get interrupted when I'm out playing with my son. People are lovely, but it's kind of like I've had to actually sacrifice. So that's why, back to the point, people are better do it for the right reasons, because I'm doing this. I want to fix the education system because I want to give people knowledge to do what they love and not be in jobs they hate. But I've had to sacrifice being famous. People don't think that when they become famous.
No, I think everyone thinks it's great. I mean, I see it a lot when one of the roles I do working with Lord Sugar is I take on the apprentice winners, and when they win the show, and help establish their business and PR them. And I always have to get them in that mindset of moving from suddenly of being on TV on BBC for 12 weeks in front of 10 million viewers to get your head down, get on with your business, but let's use the fame that you've achieved on the show to the advantage of your business. I think the worst type of fame is just fame for the sake of fame. I'll never work with anyone from a reality show or something if the only objective they've got is just being famous. If there's a business objective, that's fine. But of course you can make anything famous. You've got to make it interesting. My favourite example, actually, is I got a couple of mates in property who were out for a drink. This was about 5 years ago. And we were just talking about, they were like, do you really think you could make anything famous? I was like, yeah, absolutely anything, anyone. You've just got to find the hook, the angle, cut through. And they're like, all right, we'll give you a challenge and we'll give you something to make famous. And I was like, okay, whatever. So came up with this. The topic they gave me was bollards. And they were like, why don't you create a Twitter account, and if you can get 500 followers in a month or something, next dinner, next beers on us. Anyway, that was the bet. Cut a long story short, created something called the World Bollard Association, which was a fictional parody organisation that looked after the millions and millions of bollards all around the world. Created a Twitter account. That account today has, I think, 200,000 followers, got its own merchandise range, there was a post last week, did 1.5 million comments. It's not just me anymore, because my two mates who work in these boring industries, it's the most exciting thing to have ever happened in their life. So one of the guys is really the guy that now, a very, very funny bloke, writes most of the posts and does all the copy, and the other guy helps with the merchandise and sells the merch around the world. It's had celebrity followers, been in everywhere from the Washington Post to the Sun have covered the World Bollard Association. And it all started with a bet. You can't make anything famous. And to me, if you can make a bollard famous, you really can make anything famous. But there's always an angle. There's always something clever. You've always got to add that value, whether it's intelligence, information, education, humour, controversy. There's always something you can do, but you've got to do something different to everyone else to stand out. And who would have thought they'd be interested in following a Twitter account on the World Bollard Association? I mean, it seems...
It's those abstract things, by the way. That's a brilliant story. Like when I bought a staircase in Twickenham, suddenly all the older generation know me as well as the younger generation now. That, you're that guy that bought a staircase in Twickenham. Yeah. It's just random stuff, actually, that can cause...
Well, I think I can't remember exactly. You either WhatsApp me or something, and you said, I think I've just done something really stupid. I bought a staircase in an auction, and I'm like, I said to you, that will pay for itself in PR in days.
It has already done. We've got about £2 million worth of PR for a £35,000 staircase.
And why? Because it's different and it's unusual, and you've got to understand what an angle is. And there's no point saying the same as everyone else. You could have spent more than £35,000 on an HQ, and obviously no one's going to write about you opening an office. And there's no story there. You build a staircase, put a doorbell on, allow people to record their dreams. That's something that has got inherent talkability within it. So.
If someone listening today wants to get famous, I mean, what you mentioned there slightly, the building blocks. What are the things that people maybe need to think about if they want to become famous?
Well, the first thing I say is, why do you want to become famous? Right. What's the reason for it? And if they said to me, I don't know, it'd be quite cool to be famous and get free drinks, and
don't do it.
You don't do it.
You don't get free drinks.
Don't you?
No, I don't know. I don't know where that dream. I don't even get upgraded in hotels.
Don't you? Even I get free shit thrown at me.
Well, by the way, this is an interesting point. I think, and this is something just to touch on. Like, I think a lot of the time, business to business reputation was what I always cared about. When I was building Fluid, I cared. It was the industry reputation that I had that got me the business.
Yes.
The company brand, of course, is nice.
Yeah.
Fluid, my agency business was called Fluid, but the actual business still was personal referrals. I think people forget that within companies. It's still very personal, right? So you know someone that knows you and trusts you. It's not really about brand as such in that way.
People buy people. It's as simple as that. And even if you look at the biggest organisations in the world, the most successful ones, you'll be able to align an individual to that person.
Right.
Which is a good and a bad thing. I mean, it makes them a liability potentially. You have a controversial CEO, or sometimes now a really introverted CEO. That can be damaging to the overall brand of a company.
Well, Mark Zuckerberg's got that a little bit, hasn't he? I mean, he's very prominent. He's not really socially. He's a bit social awkward.
Well, you look at how he's reinvented himself. It's no longer.
So before and after pictures are pretty funny.
Yeah, and he has moved from this almost like robotic sort of tech dork to someone that is now, use the word cool loosely, but that's not accidental. He's got a PR advisor that has styled him. I mean, look at politics. Politics, and we're not going to talk politics on this podcast, but if you look at politicians, often the ones who are successful are the ones who are the most charismatic, that are the best at communicating. They're not necessarily the best politicians. And unfortunately, sometimes some of the best politicians who are introverted and just getting on with the job don't have a profile, don't know how to communicate eloquently. They don't get the spotlight and the career success that they probably deserve. And so, publicity and public profile is important. Look at someone like David Beckham, who was an amazing footballer, brilliantly talented, but not brilliant in terms of is a good-looking guy, but not brilliant at not particularly eloquent or, now look at him, fast forward 20 years.
No, he's got an image of being a business owner,
he can speak brilliantly, the way he talks is
people
so
do
much
change.
better.
People say people don't change. It's not true. You can improve yourself that way.
Change, but it's also been carefully managed and trained, and the David Beckham you see today is not just a natural change, it's fantastic advice. It's got brilliant people around him. So, you can achieve that.
The personal brand stuff, I have to say, I've actually had a little bit of a struggle with this because reputation really matters to me. Like, I really don't want people to say horrible things about me. I don't.
Yeah.
But I remember when I first started doing TikTok, and I knew that TikTok was where my audience was.
Yeah.
Right? It's where the people that needed help with business were.
Yes.
But none of my peers were there, and so they would judge me, and I found that really hard at first. It's literally like, Simon's on TikTok, that's weird. Why are you always telling people you're rich? And I found that whole judgment very weird. But it took time. But those same people that judged me now ask me for advice about how to get popular on TikTok or how to do social media, and they're permanently asking me for help and advice and support, which means it's a big turnaround. But it took about 3 years. From the time that I sold my agency. I remember I was hanging out with another 20 people at this event that all sold their agency on this private wealth company, and every single one of them was judging me. They were like, "Oh, you're doing stuff on TikTok. Why are you doing? Is that where kids dance? That's weird." And I just remember, like, personal brand matters so much to me, and it should matter to everybody. But that judgment really affected me. But I pushed through and came out the other end. But it's not easy.
It's tough. I mean, you've seen it on a very, very minor level. I mean, I advise high-profile businesses, business owners, talent. When there is a major shitstorm, you've got to be tough and thick-skinned. And it's not for everyone. But, you were an early adopter. People were quick to judge. Unfortunately, we're in quite a woke society. So, the higher profile you are, you can go onto social media and say the sky is blue. There'll always be someone that will argue that it's not. That's the reality of the world we live in. You've got to learn to be a bit resilient.
I've learned that. But I found it very hard, I have to say. And I think that's the other thing about personal brand, isn't it? If you stick to what you really believe in, then it doesn't matter what other people say.
No.
For me, a lot of people are like, he's just trying to sell a course in the end, and I never have.
No.
And so in the end, you can prove them wrong by just following through, right? But personal brand's tough.
It depends on your personality as well. And sometimes, comments can break you. And, I don't get a lot of abuse because I'm fairly vanilla online. There's not a lot to offend people. But there'll always be one dickhead that will write something nasty or negative, and it's just jealousy and bitterness. But it does sort of, I don't over-obsess about it, but it's not for everyone. But
I think in business you've got to be thick-skinned in general, haven't you? Because I remember I fired a client at Fluid once, and then that client went around telling everybody that we did something wrong. We hadn't. They were just unreasonable. They had scope creep, right? Basically kept asking for more stuff, and at some point we just said no, fired them. At this point, the company was 5 years old, by the way. And I remember that person in that company going around telling all the other clients that we had that we were bad. But in the end, it hurt their reputation because it wasn't true.
I think people see through it.
Yeah.
I remember the first time someone criticised me, and it was a job we'd done. We'd actually done a really good job. But the client had ignored my advice, which was actually not to do PR because I felt it was too early for their business and it wouldn't impact the results. So I said, don't do anything. But they were desperate to do it, got loads of publicity, and then didn't do anything for their business. And unfortunately, the business sort of went under. And a couple of months later, via a friend of a friend, or I sort of heard, this guy was saying you did a really shit job for him. I was so annoyed. I phoned him up. Because my reputation is everything to me. And I was like, how fucking dare you? Like, it wasn't arrogance. I was like, if you remember the conversation, I told you it was too early. You said you wanted to do it anyway. We got you millions of pounds of publicity. The issue was not our publicity. The issue was your business wasn't ready. It was a dating business. So it needed people on the site to populate it before you were going to make it famous. They wanted to make it famous so that people would go on the site. And with a dating site, if you go onto a dating site and there's no women or there's no men on there, you don't give it a second go.
It doesn't matter, all the PR in the world won't help that.
You're like, that sounds cool. You go on it. There's two ugly birds from Scarborough and you think, not for me.
Whoa.
Sorry.
We've gone too far. Sorry, Scarborough listeners.
Sorry,
nothing
personal, just an example. Yeah. But, so that's the end of that dating site. You don't give it a second chance.
In fact, you shouldn't have that PR because you're not
ready. And that was the advice. As it happens, the concept was good and we got a ton of PR. Like, it was everywhere. But people were going onto the site and there was no one on there, so they left.
I think you're right to fight, though. I recently, a couple of weeks ago, had a reporter go into the DMs of all the people that we've helped. We've helped about 600 people so far in our content. And say a very clever wording of like, we've heard that Simon is not helping people with their dreams. What's your experience? You know, that whole Donald Trump thing, people tell me, I've heard. Yeah. And that hurts my personal brand by them. Luckily, those people, they screen grabbed the message, they sent it to me. I literally, through Instagram, instantly rang that reporter. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah. What you're innuendoing that I've done something wrong. And that reporter, in fairness to them, they were like, oh, actually, I've done my research. I'm so sorry, Simon. I was a bit tired. I probably shouldn't have worded it that way. And then they actually got us, to make up for it, they got us on the news. And as a positive story.
You're right to call it out.
Exactly. I mean, you've got to call bullshit when people are like that, because otherwise they carry on mouthing off without context.
What you've got to remember is the more successful you are as a business, as an individual, the more newsworthy you are, the more people are going to try and find a negative
I'm scared
angle.
that it's surprising how they, people, I don't want to get into conspiracy theories, but the news do make up stuff. They make up clicks. They make stuff to get clicks. It's not true.
The business of news is to generate clicks.
People don't realise that. They think news partly is like to tell the truth. It's not.
Well, it will always tell the truth, but their version of the truth, look, I see Lord Sugar's the best example. He will put something out, 99.9% of it will be positive. There'll be one person that says, you're an idiot. And then that's all a media need for a headline. Twitter users call Lord Sugar an idiot after post. Twitter users, like 3 people out of 50,000 people that have commented. But it's accurate and it's click. I mean, what's a better story? You know, people call Sugar an idiot, or people say Sugar's a genius, or people applaud, you know, like negativity, controversy, you know, that sort of stuff sells papers, it gets clicks throughs. And this is the business of news, unfortunately, is the more views, the more revenue they generate, because it generates more clicks. So it's a funny old world, but I'll always deal with it. I mean, I had a situation where there was a terrible story coming out about someone on their wedding day. Their ex, I can't remember, basically someone in their past had told a story to a very, very big newspaper, and it was coming out on their wedding, and they were distraught. You'd be upset anyway, but it's supposed to be the best day of your life, and there's this thing hanging over, and they phone me and they're like, you know, and I said, is it true? She said, oh, you know, like there's a degree of truth in it. It's a bit exaggerated, but it's my wedding. I don't want there to be a double page spread in this newspaper on the day of my wedding. I want it to, and I don't want it hanging over me. And I was like, what are we going to do? And it wasn't, you know, the point is there was an element of truth in this story. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to phone the journalist and just level with them. And I said, look, there's an element of truth to your story, but for one moment, I'd just like you to think about, if it was your wedding day, I said, are you married? They're like, no, not yet. I said, like, if it was your wedding day, say you're getting married. I said, you got a girlfriend? Yeah, I got a girlfriend. So, okay, say when you get married, how would you feel if this story came out on your wedding day with your mum and dad there, your family there, all your best mates? It would kill the most important day of your life. He was like, yeah, you're right. I said, is it really that important a story? It's nothing, you know, there's nothing groundbreaking. It was just a bit of tittle-tattle. And I said, look, do me a favour. Don't run it. Let me speak to my client. Tell her not to worry. It's not coming out. And then let's go for lunch with her, you know, next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks' time, and see what you think. And if you still want to run it, fair enough. And they did. Oh, and it was just appealing to someone as a human being. But, you know, that's the world of the media, unfortunately.
I have to say, the journalist that did that to me was very, very nice when I spoke to them. Again, I think it's an interesting dynamic, because I do feel like the news is a business and people don't realise that. So sometimes these stories come out, they are quite harmful. I mean, the Sun did a story on me recently saying I'm worth 400 million. Well, it's not true. And the thing is, though, it creates all this kind of weird begging letters, which, you know, my thing is about education and maybe helping people get the money they need, not all from me, but for what they need, you know, whatever that's crowdfunding or whether that's start a business and charge up front so you've got the cash flow. It's about educating people. But unfortunately, when they run a story like that, it's like suddenly it opens up the floodgates, and they did it just to get clicks. They didn't ring me up and ask me or do any due diligence on that. You know, they just made some weird guess. And once it's in the Sun, people think it's true. I don't even know how that's even possible.
But remember, the media is your friend, and there's so much pressure on the media to churn out stories. You know, if you look at the amount of stories that go onto the Mail online, I mean, it's like every minute there's a new story. So there's a lot of pressure. You can help them. Right. You know, like sometimes
give them that information.
Give them something interesting. Give them something that's going to be newsworthy. The reason why your staircase story did well is because it's unusual, and it's like man buys staircase for 45 grand, or that's clickbait. It doesn't have to be negative. So, you know, the job of a good PR person or someone in marketing is to create those stories, create the content that is interesting. The resources of the media are not like they used to be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, where they had huge news desk, they had loads of time to do reporting. A lot of the time they're very young. A lot of them are interns, just churning out story after story. They're not well researched. A lot of the time, you know, you will see typos online and captions that are wrong. Help them. You know, the job of a good PR person is to give them information and to be their friend. If I can provide stuff to the media, you know, that's doing the job for them.
Well, that's the answer, right? Sometimes it's write the press release for the journalist, and you've saved them work. And if there's a good piece well written, you've saved them not only work, but you've given them something to push out about you, right?
Correct.
It's that simple, isn't it, sometimes with PR?
Yeah, it's not complicated. It's not a complicated industry, in my opinion. I don't think it's complicated. The complicated bit is knowing what to say and how to say it and what you want to achieve from it. So when you say send a press release is there to sort of give factual information so that they don't make a mistake, the value of a company, the name of a website, the description of a business. But it's not there to be lifted and put into a newspaper. The job of a good publicist, PR person, market person, is to tell the story and what's the story about. And you should be able to do that in 2 or 3 lines. And then if that hooks them in, here's some background on it. But you've got to know that angle, and you've got to know the call to action at the end of it.
Like a hogged conversation.
No, so I'm learning. I think that just one thing you said, which I think is quite important, it's something that we've learned kind of growing Simon's brand and the brand of our ecosystem over the last few years, is like, yes, negativity gets attention. Yes, negativity gets clicks. That applies for the media. It also very much applies with personal brand. But obviously what the problem with personal brand is, if you use that to grow your own personal brand, that negativity, then you have negativity surrounding you. You're having like a negative effect on people. And a lot of people, particularly in our sort of space, that they'll use negativity, controversy, fear-mongering to grow their personal brand. But in my opinion, it's not sustainable at all. And it just creates more negativity in the world, which it doesn't need. Whereas like conversely, what we've managed to do, and to Simon's credit, he's really kind of kept up over the last few years, is everything that Simon talks about is positive. It's inspiring. What's your dream? It's not the system is broken, we should all be upset. It's, yes, the system is broken, but this is the solution. I think this is what we can do to fix it. This is me asking someone what's their dream, not slating the government or slating this person, slating that person. And like that, the effect of building your personal brand in that positive way, I think has been huge for what we've been doing. Do you see that as like a common theme across PR as a whole? You've
always got to add value with your social content, don't you? I mean, and that doesn't necessarily need to be educational. It could be making someone laugh, smile, pointing them in the direction of information, whatever it might be. Like, there's got to be a value exchange where someone gets something out of it. Yeah. So if your only sort of modus operandi is by being controversial and negative, it works for a bit. You know, like Andrew Tate blew up by just being...
Trying to avoid saying his name, but we've got it in there now.
Okay. So, you know, just being controversial. Yeah. And yeah, he sort of influenced and inspired a lot of young people. Mm. But I think we're already a bit bored of that. You know?
Well, plus it's not a brand anyone wants to be associated with. It's not.
Well, you say that, but young people are really influenced by it. Because it's a bit
that's
different.
Not necessarily positive, is it?
It's not positive at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's scary.
It's very scary.
I think there's a real negative influence on it. But, you know, people will get bored of that. You know, people got bored of Katie Hopkins. People got bored. You know, look at, like, Simon Cowell. If you go back to the very, very early days when he was doing Pop Idol and then the early days of X Factor, you know, he was the nasty judge. He, like, became, like, this pantomime villain. Piers Morgan as well started the early part of their career. They were, like, pantomime bad guys. Yeah. It kind of worked. Well, it did work. Not kind of worked. It worked.
I wouldn't want their lives, though. I was thinking that about, like, the people that come up to me are so lovely and kind and thank you for inspiring us. If you're Piers Morgan, I know, you know, it's like people must be like having to go at him for his view on the world.
Not anymore, because he's totally evolved. You know, like, he's brilliant, you know, because he's got an opinion. He'll call people out, but he's highly educated. He knows what he's doing. I've said it to his face. If I could hire any PR person in the world, I would hire him. I know he knows exactly what he's doing. He's a PR genius because he comes from a journalistic background. And yeah, sometimes it's tough because if you're going to have an opinion, there's going to be someone that disagrees with it. Sometimes he will be controversial. I don't think for the sake of controversy, but he knows when to dial up or dial down something. What I really respect about him is his stand by his beliefs. You know, if his believes in something, he will defend it and promote it till he's blue in the face, even if other people are bored on it. You know, look at what he did around gun crime in America. It effectively got him cancelled from certain elements of American society, but he didn't care. He believed in it, he was passionate about it, came from the heart. Yeah, I really, really respect that. But he started off as he was a bit of a sort of pantomime villain, in the same way Simon Cowell was, and Simon Cowell and Piers Morgan no longer are, really. You know, they built their profiles to you can't knock what either of those people have achieved. It's incredible, but it's controversy for the sake of controversy. Is boring.
But again, you go up and you come down quick because it does get boring. I mean, I do think, despite what the world's portrayed as, we want to live in a positive world. We want to live in a world where things are good, where there's hope. I mean, that's why I personally think the best personal brand marketing person in my lifetime has been Obama. A lot of people don't like him as a president. I mean, that's fine. But I think I have his book of all the photographs that it's called 44 because he was the 44th president, of all the photos that were taken during his presidency. And I look through that quite often and I feel inspired, like a young black boy touching his hair, and the symbolism is that young black boy could be president one day, like, I don't know, just like that personal brand. That's the sort of personal brand I think more people should go after, like almost a positive personal brand. It's actually harder to do a positive personal brand, I think.
Well, yeah, what you're saying actually is it's someone that has a bit of depth,
yes,
a bit of integrity, and sticks to their values.
Exactly.
And, where you'll never see Obama is sort of where he's not supposed to be, getting involved in things that aren't within his area of knowledge or specialism. And that's why he's got respect. And I think also as a personality, quite humble for someone who's president.
I've never met him, but just from what I see online.
But you understand his brand, and that's, it might not be for everyone. Yeah, as soon as you get into politics, doesn't matter what you think of someone as a person or a character, if you don't believe in their politics, the two align with one another. So it's always hard.
I think politics are interesting to study. I mean, without getting into it, as you say, but if I look at the present political campaign that's running in this country, depending on when people are listening to it, might be over already, but like, I think someone like Nigel Farage is really interesting, like as a personal brand. I mean, he is posh, but somehow he's for the normal man. It's the Trump model. He's a billionaire, but somehow he's for the common man. And it's a really interesting thread through needle strategy, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, you're right about the sort of posh common. I think the most important thing is people like Farage and Boris Johnson and those that have come before him, they're able to communicate with people in a way that they feel like they're being understood. And that's what politicians have to achieve. You as a voter, member of the public, have to think, yeah, this guy kind of gets me. And I think the ability to talk in plain English. I'm not talking about his politics or anything that he says. I'm just talking about the way that he communicates. He does it in a way where people think, oh, at least this guy's got a different opinion. He kind of gets it because everyone else is saying this and he's saying this. He resonates with them. That's what Trump did. That's what Boris Johnson did. And it is a gift. Sometimes it can be abused because these people talk so much nonsense that they're, to the point where they're to the point where they're lying, and people lap it up. But people want inspiration. They want to be inspired. They want to hear something different. And I think the thing with politics is most politicians, people don't trust them because they're not sincere. They don't communicate in a manner where people feel like they're relatable or that they understand them or this kind of stuff. When someone can do that, it's very powerful. I always think, going back to Lord Sugar, that one of his greatest gifts, and not everyone likes him, he can be quite Marmite, but one of his gifts is he can take quite complicated business, politics, whatever it might be, and communicate it in a way that a white van man can understand it. And that's a real skill. You have to be really intelligent to do that. And so you could have a politician like a Gordon Brown who's incredibly intelligent, an economist, a mathematician, but to be honest, pretty incapable of communicating that. Put him next to a Lord Sugar, and a Lord Sugar can be a mouthpiece for helping to explain all this stuff that's going on in a way that people can understand it. Don't necessarily agree with it, but they'll understand it. That's a gift. And I think that's what someone like a Farage has. And again, his polarising. You find plenty of people that absolutely despise him as well as people that love him. But you can't deny he's got this ability to sort of cut through and communicate with people. Whether they choose to agree with that or not is another matter. But that's a skill.
Can we make the Bollard organisation the next political party that runs this country?
They don't really get involved in politics.
They don't. The Bollard Association. But at least we can have some direction.
Just about bollards.
Just about bollards. But I kind of feel like there is a need for a new political party, but that's probably a conversation for another time. But, well, look, I love talking about this subject. I could talk about PR and marketing all day long. Just to close off the podcast, if you look into the future, with AI influencers and the whole new world we're presently potentially entering into, what do you think is like going to stand the test of time when it comes to PR and marketing? It's never going to change.
the gift of being able to tell a story is never going to change. And AI, for sure, is here. It's not going anywhere. It's going to become more and more intelligent, cleverer and cleverer. It's about mixing human intelligence with artificial intelligence. So the best marketing people will understand how to use technology to enhance what they're doing from a human perspective. But you can never lose the significance of being able to tell a story and create value for a person, a brand, a company through that storytelling. And as artificial intelligence increases, as social media increases, which it will, because it's only going one way, the difficulty of being able to cut through is going to become more and more and more challenging. So the gift of creativity now is more valuable than ever. You have to find a way to cut through and get noticed. So the best PR agencies, marketing agencies, ad agencies, business people will be using AI to make themselves more efficient, to allow the sort of more mundane things to get done quickly, to increase the efficiency of processes, but free them up so that they can be using the bit that AI can't replicate, which is human intelligence, to come up with creative, narrative, storytelling that will cut through all of this noise. And that's the battleground for the future, is how do you cut through? And all the data and intelligence in the world can't replace great content, a great story, a great brand. So the pressure is sort of bigger than ever to be creative, I think.
How does a human get better at that muscle, that strategic, that creative muscle?
That's a really good question. I mean, there's a big debate, you're either creative or you're not creative. I don't think that's true. I think everyone has creativity within them. They just need to know how to nurture it. And actually, I think good creative people, they open their minds to influences and listening to different things. Often when I have a creative challenge, I will just speak to my mum and dad or my kids, or I'll go to the pub and talk to the person at the bar. You've got to open your mind up to listening and finding creative inspiration. So I get that as well from listening to podcasts, from looking at stuff online. Don't live in a sheltered environment. That's what I always say to my kids. Don't hang out just with the same people doing the same thing, watching the same programs, wearing the same clothes, going to the same places, visit places you haven't been. And I'm not being like arty-farty. I'm not saying like, go to an art gallery and, sure, if you want to do it, but get into places and interact with things that you haven't seen, see different cultures, open your mind. And, sometimes we don't have the luxury of doing that in the physical world, but having access to the internet just enables us to understand so many different perspectives, and creative ideas come from everywhere.
Yeah,
they really do. Yeah. So I think we have a cult of creative directors now in the marketing world, and they're almost they're sat on a pedestal, and they're difficult characters because they just need to think. And there are some amazing creative directors out there, but actually the best agencies are ones that have creativity infused throughout the whole organisation. And the job of a great creative director is to encourage and embrace creativity within the organisation, not to keep it within the four walls of their office, because one company can't rely on one person. It has to just be part of the culture. And there's a separate part of creativity which I think is about being able to commercialise it, which is a whole different topic.
Yeah.
It's so true that I say anyone can be an entrepreneur. It's just a question of what type of entrepreneur are you. I think it's the same when everyone's creative. It's just what type of creative are you? Maybe you like writing blogs. Maybe you like to draw. Maybe it's a way of describing things. It's like everyone's got that creativity in them. Yeah. They just don't realise it sometimes.
I'd just say for younger people as well, it's especially at the start of their career, or if it's your own business, at the start of your business, it's very easy to get caught up in executing. I don't know, say a marketing campaign, or running the business, but giving that time to allow for creativity. At the end of the day, at the start of the day, I think I'm realizing is more and more and more important. And I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe a bit further on in your career, like you give that time to it because it's the most fun thing. And I feel like you guys give that time to creativity, but a lot of younger people neglect that because they're so busy executing. But if they just cut out a little bit of time at the start, at the end of the day, to focus on like you said, like listening to a podcast, going for a walk, going somewhere different, allowing their creative muscle to work, then
it's really true.
The impact is potentially huge.
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest barriers to people's success as an entrepreneur, fulfilling their dreams, is not understanding how to manage their time. If you can master time, you will become stronger and better, and life becomes more enjoyable. And for me, I mean, there's lots of aspects to it, but one of the key things is understanding the difference between urgency and importancy. Mm-hmm. Is importancy a word?
It is now.
It is now.
You own it.
Understanding the difference between what's urgent and what's important.
Yeah.
And we are in a world, especially in the UK, where everything is urgent. You need this in 5 minutes. It has to be done by tomorrow. Can you do this? Can you do that? And we want to please, and we do it, and we spend our time doing that. But next to it, there's these important things, which is the bits that take a bit of time that you need to give some thought to, that are strategically more important. They're also probably the bits that you as an individual find more challenging and a bit more difficult. So there's a tendency to put off the important things. I haven't got time. I've got to do this. This one wants this in 5 minutes. Oh, I said I'd get this. I've got to deliver. You've got to find the time to do the important stuff, because it's the important stuff that will make a huge difference. And if you can master that and be aware of what's different in terms of urgency and being important, it's going to make a huge, huge difference to your success and that sort of path you go on to greatness. So I always talk to people about time management and understanding that difference.
100%.
And creativity falls into the category of it's incredibly important. But, you often hear people say, I just haven't got around to that, haven't got time. I hate it when people say they haven't got time. You have got time. You've just got to prioritise your time to make sure you're doing those important things and not just running around delivering all the urgent stuff.
Mm-hmm. On that note, thank you for giving us your time, giving the listeners your knowledge of 30 years. And I know, you've taken a day out to be with us here. It's an honour. I just want to say thank you so much for supporting what we're doing and being here.
Thank you. I'm only here because you said you'd buy me lunch.
I'm going to do that. McDonald's, here we come. All right. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I love that.